Hello, everyone. I am not Cassandra, but I am going to share a couple of videos from her. First, a personalized introduction that was made just for this conference, and then her inspiring and amazing TED Talks. So, without further ado, let me share. And I am going to share sound, so hopefully it will come through pretty well. Okay, here we go.
Hey everyone, it's Cassandra Vieten. It's so great to join you here for this Tilt online conference. It's been a real pleasure to be able to collaborate with Tilt over the past few years, some in my role as Director of Research at the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination at UC San Diego. And then today I want to share a little bit about work that's come out of my role as Executive Director of the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation, whose mission is to integrate salutogenic approaches like exercise, nutrition, and mind-body practices into treating mental health disorders and elevating mental well-being for everyone. Salutogenic is a word that means health enhancing as opposed to pathogenic, which is disease focused. And the great news is that there are now hundreds of practices, methods, and tools that are focused on enhancing health, that have a lot of evidence for their efficacy in terms of reducing symptoms of mental health challenges and disorders, and also elevating mental well-being. And yet these are not yet integrated into conventional medical care, conventional psychiatric and psychological care, to the extent that we think they should be. You know, it's still pretty focused on psychotherapy, medication, hospitalization, which is obviously super important and everyone should have access to it. But there are these dozens and dozens of ways that people can be empowered to self-administer mental health enhancing practices and do it in families, communities, neighborhoods, in groups. They can be peer delivered. So we really want to raise awareness around, yes, there's a mental health crisis, but there's also this incredible mental health renaissance happening. Now, when I gave a TEDx talk on this topic earlier this year in San Diego, I worked on it really hard to really walk the line between being evidence-based on one hand and also really being able to say, hey, there's a lot happening on the cutting edge that everyone should know about. The talk went well, I thought, and I heard that the TED office wanted to feature it to their 34 million subscribers. And I was pretty excited about that until 8 weeks later, when the anonymous TED Science Committee got back to us and said, actually, we don't believe this stuff. You know, this is not evidence-based. So upon request, I sent an annotated version of the transcript of the talk with over 60 high-tier journal peer-reviewed articles supporting the evidence for what was said. They got back to me after quite a while and said, oh, okay, well, we'll post it on our channel, but we won't feature it. So that was kind of frustrating, but I'm still really proud of the talk. I hope that you'll enjoy it. I hope that you'll share it. And again, congrats to Tilt, and hope you guys all have happy holidays. Hey everyone, it's Cassandra Vieten. It's so great.
You've all probably heard that we are in a mental health crisis, but what you may not have heard is we're also in the beginning of a mental health renaissance. That word renaissance, it's a little bit overused, but what does it mean? It's a period of time where people wake up. They start to do things and see things in completely different ways. The culture transforms. New inventions permeate society, and everything changes until it's hard to remember that it used to be any other way. this is what's happening with mental health. I've had a lifelong interest in transforming the way we view and approach mental health, in part because mental health issues run in my family. Depression, anxiety, alcoholism, bipolar, and also brilliance, scientific acumen, teaching, poetry, music. We're kind of the whole enchilada. Like a tornado that miraculously leaves some houses unscathed, mental health difficulties have skipped some people in my family. Others suffer from mental health disorders to this day. Some people thrive in the face of them, and others have died from complications of them. From the ages of 14 to 17, I experienced depression, anxiety, addiction, leading to hospitalization. Then at age 17, suddenly, a moment of clarity, which to this day I can't really explain. It was like my own personal renaissance. Like I woke up. I saw my life, my world, myself in a completely different way. I realized that life was worth living. And since that time, the driving question for me has been, what happened to me in that moment of clarity? What is true mental health? And how can I help other people in those dark places? I became a clinical psychologist and a mind-body medicine researcher. I have developed approaches to mental well-being and studied them. I've interviewed hundreds of people about their own transformations, written books on the topic, and now I lead an international mental health foundation and am a researcher at UC San Diego. So, the crisis is happening. 1 out of 4 people meet criteria for a mental health disorder in every given year. That means that everyone in this room either has themselves or knows someone who struggled with mental health issues this year. 22 veterans a day die by suicide, more than die in combat. Suicide is the second leading cause of death of young people. When I was preparing for this talk, an elite NFL athlete, a young YouTube sensation, and the captain of the women's soccer team at Stanford University all took their own lives within a span of just 3 days. So the crisis is very real. But just like my crisis led to a transformation, our crisis is leading us into a renaissance. So why do I say this? Well, for one thing, more people are talking about mental health more openly than ever before. Athletes, late-night talk show hosts, actors, our kids. And with this raised awareness, we're able to reimagine how we look at mental well-being. So one of the ways we're doing that is we're moving from the idea that some people have mental health issues and some don't. Those people over there have it. In fact, mental health symptoms appear on a spectrum, from high symptoms, high distress, to low symptoms, low distress. Where you start on this spectrum is due to an interaction between your genetics and your life experiences. But we all can move up and down this spectrum at different points in our lives. Our families, our loved ones. There is no them. So let's take this one step further. You'd think that as you move beyond low symptoms, you'd get into mental thriving, flourishing, extra super mental well-being. In fact, it's more like this. In a weird way, mental illness and mental well-being are not two opposite ends of a continuum. Experts at the Global Wellness Institute have shown us that while mental health symptoms appear on the horizontal line, mental well-being appears on the vertical line, with languishing at the bottom and flourishing at the top. So you can languish at the bottom, you can be lonely, feel disengaged, burn out, feel adrift, without traditional symptoms of mental disorders. And at the top, you can flourish. You can feel connected, engaged. You can feel a sense of meaning and purpose, even in the face of having mental health symptoms or disorders. And so it becomes very important to understand true mental well-being is not only about symptom reduction, it's about giving people the building blocks for mental well-being. So what else are we learning in this mental health renaissance? So mental health is not just in our heads. It's in our whole bodies, our gut, our hormones, our relationships, our environment, our energy, our spirit. Mental well-being relies on an ecosystem, an interlocking array of exercise, nutrition, spirituality, time in nature, strong relationships. These are the things that make life worth living. And yes, we do sometimes need crisis support, treatment, medication, hospitalization, and we shouldn't feel ashamed when we do, and every person should have access to these things immediately. But that is only one small part of this ecosystem. Getting stabilized is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of it. So what I'm suggesting is that our prescription pad look like this. Is this even feasible? Is it realistic? Well, yeah, it's actually happening all over the place as we speak, and I want to share a few examples with you. Let's take exercise. My best friend, my favorite nemesis. At the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation, we reviewed 3 decades of science on the relationship between exercise and mental health. The findings were clear. Exercise is so effective for depression and anxiety, it should be prescribed, just like physical therapy after an injury. And it is kind of like that, because we can't just hand people an exercise plan. We have to walk them through it step by step, increasing gradually over time. This is why our foundation is bringing exercise into mental health care settings, and we're training fitness professionals to be ready to work with therapists and patients worldwide. So let's take nutrition. Again, the evidence is completely clear. What we eat substantially influences our mental well-being. Pretty hard to integrate if you're not feeling too good. That's why our Centers for Integrative Health here at UCSD include a movement room and a teaching kitchen. It's not enough just to give people a diet plan. We have to shop with them, cook with them, eat with them. How about spirituality and meaning? You might think, okay, now we're starting to drift a little bit far from mental health, but actually in the general population, 90% of people rely on a higher power. And 80% of mental health patients say that their spirituality is among their top coping skills. Yet therapists rarely include it and don't actually receive training in it. So this is why my colleagues and I across 5 universities are bringing an initiative forward to train mental health professionals in spiritual competencies across mental health professions. Another thing we're learning as we move into this mental health renaissance is that we have to start earlier. Intervening early not only reduces suffering, but it also saves money and lives. How early? Well, some fantastic colleagues and I at UC San Francisco taught inner-city, high-risk pregnant women meditation, mindful movement, and mindful eating during pregnancy. The program not only helped the women with their anxiety and depression, but when their babies were born, they showed less stress reactivity as well. This is not woo-woo. This is whole person mental health care. And so, I've told you some of the examples in the ecosystem, and there are literally hundreds more that are evidence-based. They're at our fingertips. They're free. We can do them at home. We can do them with our peers and friends. We don't have to wait for doctors and nurses to deliver them to us. But what's at the cutting edge? So remember that moment of clarity I had at 17? It turns out that lots of people have those, and sometimes they shift things permanently. Kind of like PTSD in reverse. So, What if we could engineer those perspective shifts? Or could we make them more likely? A Buddhist teacher once taught me, enlightenment is always an accident, but you can make yourself more accident-prone. So how can we help people shift perspective? Right down the street here at the Clarke Center for Human Imagination, we're bringing people into virtual reality to help them get perspective shifts that it's hard to deliver in this reality. For example, taking people with depression and allowing them to see their train of thought chugging along in the distance as an actual train, giving them some much-needed space between them and negative thinking patterns, or taking them into space to get beyond a bird's eye view. Also, right here at UCSD, our Psychedelics and Health Research Initiative is administering psychedelics in a medical setting for people with pain, depression, behavioral disorders. This is happening in labs all over the world right now. People are reporting that these experiences, which spring from indigenous practices, are among the top 5 most meaningful experiences of their lifetime, and showing long-lasting effects on mood, on behavior, and even personality, which was thought previously to be unmovable. And so it's kind of weird, I know, that we might be soon recommending increases in screen time and taking drugs as a good way to get toward mental health. But in this renaissance, I think it's super important that we entertain all solutions, even out of the box. So, I really want to encourage you to join in building a world that supports true mental health. It's not going to come from outside of us. It's not going to be delivered to us. We, like every other social movement in history, are going to have to band together and do it from the ground up. We're going to have to start earlier. It's going to be more involved than we thought it was going to be. We're going to have to offer more support. But I want you to envision a world with me where we build mental well-being skills in from day one, where people can speak openly about their mental health without shame, and where we can surround our loved ones and ourselves with a variety of evidence-based practices that work. And let's get back to you. How are you doing? How's your ecosystem? You can go to our website and build your own. Let's change the way we view and approach mental health, starting today and starting with you.